For the second straight postseason, the Cleveland Guardians over-relied on their bullpen. This time, it was in spite of data that they knew better. We'll talk about that, how they improve it, and it wouldn't be complete without some trades. It's Trade Talk Thursday on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Guardians, your only daily Cleveland Guardians podcast covering the team from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. It's our favorite half hour of the day. We hope it is yours as well. I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts the last 3 years, and I've spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league system all the way from Lake County, Arizona, Columbus, Akron. I still have never been to Lynchburg or Carolina, however.
At some point I should sit down and see what all the affiliates have been in my lifetime. I want to thank you all for joining us. I am Jeff Ellis. I have been here at Locked On as the host of Locked On Guardians for 1,587 episodes now. So just one or two. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout and 24/7, focused on prospects and the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you have podcasts. And big shout outs again, as always, to our everydayers and our insiders. Thank you all. You know, everyone, as I say, everyone joining us during this time, you are the true hardcore everydayers. Once the season is done and we're in this lull between, rumors and things happening, you are the everydayers. You are the meat on the bone, as it were, helping us through the kind of the lull of the season.
Yep, you're why we show up every single day and talk Guardians baseball, because we enjoy the community and everybody who enjoys talking Guardians baseball, even when it's 50 degrees out and the Guardians aren't playing and we are waiting for the offseason to get here. We've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. On today's show, we'll do Trade Talk Thursday, of course. Jeff and I have a couple of ideas for the Guardians to acquire some bats. But we'll talk about how the Guardians ignored their own data in the playoffs and how they can fix that in 2026. Today's episode of Locked On Guardians, of course, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5. If that bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets from FanDuel to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Play responsibly. All right, so let's jump into it, Jeff. The Guardians, of course, are making hires all the time. This is one organization that does a good job of always trying to find, I want to say, out of the box. Now, of course, they're not hiring college coaches. They're not hiring guys who have never been managers before to one-year deals with the lockout coming. But they are fairly out of the box when it comes to this stuff sometimes. And one of the guys they hired probably should have been able to help them prevent some things they did in the postseason this year, and that is relying on the bullpen. So, Saris, Jeff, you actually tipped me off to this piece. He wrote a piece about how this is as topic we talked about before. Third time a reliever has seen a hitter has seen a reliever in the postseason. So reliever batter familiarity, and do relievers suffer when a batter sees them multiple times in a playoff series? And the answer seems to be yes. There's been a lot of data that's kind of back and forth on this. It's mixed. Batter's OPS is down this year, seeing the reliever for a third time, but it was up the previous 2 years. It was way down in 2022, and it was way up before that. So it's very hard. It does fluctuate quite a bit. But one of the guys, I'm not saying he's the only one that pioneered the trend, obviously, but one of the guys who really dove into the data.
First person I saw post it. So, I mean, that doesn't mean he was the first. It's just he was the first person I saw.
Yeah. So clearly it's somebody who's involved. His name's Cameron Grove. He used to go by Pitching Bot on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, we have a screenshot up now. And this tweet that you're seeing on the YouTube is from October, I believe, of 2022. Is that right?
Yeah, because he was hired in February of 23. So a few months.
Sorry, this was January of 2022. So even before the 2022 postseason, the Guardians did not hire him until a year later.
Yes.
So they didn't have him for 2022, but they had him for 2024.
4 and 5.
And 5. So the last 2 years, he's been a part of the organization. He has data that shows that hitters are better against relievers when they see them multiple times in a playoff series. And it's due to familiarity, it's due to pitch shapes, it's due to arsenals, all that kind of stuff. So did the Guardians ignore all the data that they might have hired this guy for? Like, I'm not saying this is something he got hired for, but his Twitter name was Pitching Bot, so clearly he knows a thing or two about pitching data. How did this information not get to the dugout, or not get to the, or not, I guess, not get used in the proper way? It seems like.
Yeah, and it's just to kind of compound on this. The reason Saris was writing is because he talked about how Seattle had, the big George Springer home run was off Bizzardo, who had been great for them, but that home run was his third time facing George Springer in the postseason. And you and I have had a lot of debates. You can go back and listen to Justin's show from last Friday where he talked about like the importance of pitching, because that piece, one of the components it talked about is the idea that listen, Toronto had a very slapdash pitching staff. Let's be honest. Some guys stepped up, some guys went longer, but they had to. But instead of focusing what Cleveland did on like 3 guys and we're going to write them every single day, Toronto literally used the entire kitchen sink. Like Eric Lauer, who had been a starter at points for them, went out and gave them innings. They used starters, they used relievers, they used everyone. So there was not that familiarity, that's what I wanted to see. Now I wanted to see our starters maybe get more opportunities as well, but more than that, I was like throw Kobe Allard. Like, we know this team can't hit lefties. Don't throw them the lefty they've seen. Throw them the lefty they haven't seen. And that was Toronto's approach. Whereas what Justin talked about, very specifically, kind of giving the starters more rope, that's more what the Dodgers have done. But then again, when you have the pitching, the starters they have, you can, look at their 1-2 punch. No one can, their 1-2-3 punch. No one can compare with that. So,
I would say.
Yeah, it's like, no one can compare with anything the Dodgers have. Let's be real honest. It's part of the broken system that is baseball right now. But they have this data. Everyone knows this data. I mean, I was practically screaming it during the postseason, like, why you don't do this. And they've now done it 2 years in a row. And it's really weird that they're ignoring it when, again, the first person I remember tweeting about this, and he may not be. And if we have that incorrect, please put it in the comments and we will do a correction. But, the reason Eno mentioned Cameron Grove and the pitching bot is because that's where Eno saw it. And Eno is the cutting edge of data. He's a can't miss writer for me personally when it comes to baseball. So when I'm reading his stuff, it's like, he's talking about where it came from. And then he talked about these different approaches of, Seattle kind of lost because they had a guy maybe like, and he said very specifically this year, it's 100% jump in OPS with the data he was using. I know you said it was down. I don't know exactly. Maybe Eno's, because that's the other thing, year to year, it's a very small sample size. So maybe Eno is looking at a larger sample of multiple years. But the whole thing
2025, it's 654. 2024, it was 728.
Yeah, but it's probably like
841.
I'm betting it's less than 20 total times, like at bats per a postseason, just because to see a guy 3 times in a short series, it's so small. But I think so over the course of the data we have since I think this current setup of the postseason, it's essentially 100-point jump in OPS overall. That is where the data points to. So in his whole thing was like, it would have been smarter to go with a lesser arm and that 100-point jump in OPS. And his kind of takeaway was yes. So it's just, we had to point it out because it's, again, I love Eno, and you and I had a big debate. And it's just really interesting that Cleveland keeps doing this thing that the rest of baseball says is a bad decision. And they hired someone who was pointing it out. Like, we have to talk about that. That's a really kind of interesting, different thing that they're, we don't know. They hire a lot of guys. We talk about Joe Torval, who we were going to have on the show at one point, and then he got hired. They go and they hire a lot of interesting thinkers. People are doing things out there that are new, interesting, and original. And I love that they do that. Honestly, it gives them, you always want to have great minds coming in. It's the opposite. That's how you make up for their brain drain. But, we don't know how much in the, 2 years he's been there, Cameron Grove has a chance to really pull anyone's ear and discuss things. But either way, it's just fascinating that guy is there, and they just haven't listened to the data. So hopefully that's something they'll improve. They'll either take Justin's approach or take the kitchen sink approach next year when they make the postseason again.
Yeah, we'll talk more about how the Guardians can change that in 2026, what has to happen in order for them to avoid that issue again. And we'll also get into trades on Trade Talk Thursday. Who are we going to acquire for the Guardians this offseason? We'll tell you in a little bit. The NFL season, it has been here. The NBA season tipped off this week, and I guarantee you the FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss out on while the time is here for that offer. Right now, if you're a new customer, if you have not got in the game yet, you can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. So you pick a bet, you put down $5, and if that bet hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Pretty simple, nice offer. You don't have to do a whole lot. You could pick something simple and easy. Doesn't have to be a big, long odds. You just put $5 down on something you feel pretty good about. You do it the responsible way, and if you win, you're getting more fun to have responsible with. Like I said, the NBA just tipped off. The Cavs did lose, but they're back on Friday. We've got Thursday Night Football. You can put your stuff in for the World Series that's coming up this week as well. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Guys, we got to get real for a second. We know that excuses and anything does not solve all of our problems in life. And we've all heard them before, right? It's stress. We're tired. Happens to everybody. And when it comes to performance, sometimes your body does need a little extra boost, needs some support. That is where Rougiette is going to come in and help you out. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. If the Daniel Spino velocity doesn't get you, this will. It's prescribed. Your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door, and it's backed by board-certified 100% online doctors, so it's no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. It's very easy for you to carry out and get what you need. Visit RUGIT.com/LockedOnMLB to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB. Don't forget to use our code LockedOnMLB so they know that we sent you. Rougiette. Stop making excuses. Start making moves. Thank you all for being here on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. Again, as we always say, hit the bell on YouTube. Smash the like and subscribe button, as the kids like to say. That's the best way to keep up to date with the podcast. We always have daily episodes in the off season. We're still talking Cleveland Guardians 5 days a week until Christmas, basically. So every episode, every bit of news, anything that happens, we'll have videos for. And you can hit the auto download feature on all of your audio platforms as well. So you always have the episodes coming right into your feed. And that way, when you're on your morning run, you're walking your dog, you're working out, you're cooking dinner, and you're like, I want to listen to some Guardians baseball talk. Well, we're there for you. We have all the episodes on every podcast platform for you. It's like friends. I'll be there for you when the rain starts to pour and it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. We're here for you. All right, Jeff, let's talk a little more about how the Guardians need to use this data that Cameron Grove has, or at least is very aware of. And obviously the Guardians are aware that he is aware of. And how do they correct this in 2026? And that's a good point you said. Like, it's only been there for a couple of years, so it may not have had time to trickle down to them. And look, obviously, we don't have all the answers. Otherwise, they would hire us, right? We wouldn't be talking to all of our everydayers. We'd be working for the Guardians, not on this podcast. We don't have the answers. And that means that Stephen Vogt and his staff have access to different information. They know what their pitchers are going through. They can also read the data that's going on there too. But I think this is becoming a clear trend. Like, this wasn't an issue necessarily, when Terry Francona was bringing Andrew Miller in the fifth inning, right? Like, I don't know if he was, Andrew Miller was just so dominant. I don't know that he was facing guys all that often. One way you can do it, again, is like I said last Friday, is you have to make it so you can rely on Gavin Williams and Tanner Bybee to go 6-7 innings in the playoffs. So that way you're limiting your exposure to the Cade Smiths, the Hunter Gattises, the Eric Sabrowskis. And then when you're using the Cantillos and the Slade Ciconis and whoever else, you can use those guys a little more, liberally. Or, like you said, Jeff, they have to have different looks. Like, wrote in his piece that the Blue Jays don't have a top metric in the of any bullpen statistic.
It's a pretty weak bullpen. It's a pretty weak bullpen.
But what they figured out, and this is something the Yankees have done over the years too, I remember, is they have guys in the bullpen that offer different looks, different pitch shapes, different arm angles.
which I talked
And
about on
that's how
Monday.
you have that. Yes, you talked about that on Monday as well. Not only that, but I think you also have to like I know you want to bring Kane Smith in, and it didn't work out this year because they had the closer who I will not name, who also can't pitch in Venezuela now. That's a story for another day. You don't have him, so you couldn't use Kane Smith where you might have liked to. But I know you want to throw in guys like that in the fifth or sixth inning, or whatever, when there's two on and one out and the game's in the balance, right? You want to be able to do that, but can you do that three times against the 3, 4, 5 hitters, the 5, 6, 7 hitters? Like sometimes he's got to go out and face the 1, 2, 3 hitters. Sometimes he's got to face 9, 8, 9, 1. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to vary where you bring him in. Like I feel like that also has to factor in as well. But the Guardians, no doubt, I think bullpen's got to be part of their um, strategy this offseason. It's got to be a priority to add to that bullpen somehow when it comes to depth and when it comes to different pitch mixes, different shapes, different arm angles. I think they have to
Jimmy
make that pen
Herget.
a little bit. Yeah, you talked about him on Monday. And you know what? Back when what was it, 2017, where we thought they got a little bit cute, putting guys like Mike Clevenger in the bullpen and using Bauer to start, all that kind of stuff. You know, maybe moving some starters to the bullpen's not a bad idea because they have bigger pitch mixes in the
Mm-hmm.
postseason. Maybe you move some of those guys to the bullpen because that gives you a little more depth, a little more length, and those guys have deeper pitch mixes, so you don't have to throw the same pitch to the same guy every single time. But they absolutely have to do something about this. I don't think they can ignore the data again next year, and they don't have to ignore it. Like they have the capability to, I think, move around this.
No, I agree. Yeah, and they have the depth to make it work, and there's enough out there that it makes sense to address it head on, and set yourself up. And again, I think one of the big things too is just that idea of what I talked about on Monday, which is exactly what Toronto's done. You need those different looks. You need a few different guys because right now it is, outside of some variance in height. I feel like it's a very similar. For a while there, it's like they only wanted to draft guys that felt like they had a 3/4 release point, who threw a fastball slider and then a third pitch. Like they almost got two set because they were successful with it. But I think it then makes it easier. It just starts to make things a little bit easier. And I think there's not enough differentiation in the pen. I think they need to go out of their way to add some funk. I got to be honest. Give them some different looks. Get a side armor, get some other guys like that. I think that helps. There's ways to go about doing it. And I got to be real honest. It's not the day for it, but if the way this free agent class shakes up and with the way they have money, I know you've talked Ryan Helsley. Like personally, if I was running this team, I would probably offer someone like Devin Williams like $15 million for 2 years. Like I know people say he had a down year. He's not been great in the postseason, this and that. Overall, like surrounding statistics are fantastic. And if you put him in the closer role, guess what? Then, Cade Smith is back into that super role. Like I would go honestly, and I know people will disagree with this, but like my big money offering free agency is on a closer, not on a bat outfielder, because the outfield group is so bad.
It is bad. You're right. That's not a bad way to go. And I think we also need to be fair too. Like the data is the data, and we also have to acknowledge that Cleveland didn't have the closer who will not be named. They didn't have Nick Enright. They didn't have Sam Henches. They didn't have Andrew Walters. How much different would we be talking about the usage of the bullpen in the playoffs if they had those guys healthy in 2025? Like I feel like we would be able to say like, well, they did the Toronto Blue Jays approach, but they did it with better pitchers because those guys all have been successful relievers. Now I know Enright very limited time, but those guys all have something different to offer. Henches is a lefty. If those guys have been healthy and in the bullpen, I think we'd be having a different discussion.
But
they might have won against the Tigers.
Yeah, but I'll say this as well. Jeff Hoffman had a negative WAR this year. That Tommy Nance has bounced around baseball. Brandon Little was cut by multiple teams. Toronto has a poor bullpen. Like they had some guys who stepped up this year, but Cleveland, even with the injuries, even with the loss of Class A, they still had the better bullpen. So with those guys, without those guys, it doesn't matter. If you're going to go the kitchen sink approach, which is what you need to do in Toronto's approach, they could have done it and been successful because Toronto's doing it with a lot less. Toronto's bullpen does not match Cleveland's bullpen. I mean, Gaddis would probably be Toronto's closer this year based on performance. Smith would definitely be their top reliever. Cleveland has more horses. They just, for some reason, ignored the
They
data.
locked into those big
Yeah.
three. They sure did. All right, well, we'll talk more about free agents and the bullpen later on this offseason, but right now it's time to talk trades. Who are Jeff and I asking the Guardians to trade for this offseason? We'll talk about that next on today's Locked On Guardians. Today's episode of Locked On Guardians brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions that's just part of life, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid for a change. Don't miss out on the excitement of football season, basketball season with PrizePicks. It's good and it's fun to be right. And PrizePicks really makes it simple for you to have a little bit of fun while you're watching these football or basketball games, because all you're doing is picking more or less on player projections. You're picking more or less on Justin Herbert touchdowns and Donovan Mitchell points, Evan Mobley rebounds, all those sorts of things. And you can stack stats for the same player as well. So Donovan Mitchell's points and assists. You also get the injury reboot feature. So if you pick a player who's got a bit of an injury risk, but you like the projections and he leaves the game early and he doesn't return, it won't count against you. So download the PrizePicks app today, and you're going to use our code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups to play after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups on PrizePicks after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Welcome back into this edition of Locked On Guardians. Shout out to all the insiders. You can be part of the Insiders Club, where I talked to our insiders on Wednesday night about Daniel Espino's performance, the coaching hire for the managerial hire, I should say, for the Giants and how that might impact the Guardians. Talk about that in a future episode, I think. All that kind of stuff we share with our insiders, along with bonus content, mailbag questions that we get from them for episodes too. Any rumors that pop up this offseason, we'll be chatting, and we'll be doing once a month Google Meet chats as well. So join subtext.com/LockedOnGuardians. Plus, we have some announcements coming in the next month or so about the Insider program and some new fun features that you can be a part of. So jump in on that now. All right, Jeff, it is Trade Talk Thursday. This is what people came for. Let's be honest. We know that's why everyone's here. It's definitely not for our radio faces. Who is your first? I don't know. We'll see how much time we have to get into, but give me your first Trade Talk target for this Trade Talk Thursday.
So I've been preaching this offseason about this idea of like, give me guys who barrel, give me guys who hit the ball hard. So I went to Prospect Savant, which is a great site, and I looked for, I pulled everyone in the top 90th percentile of barrel rate. And the guy who jumped out at me, because he did everything except for he's a little passive. And that's Jacob Melton, who single-handedly cost the Guardians a game earlier this year with his defense in a corner outfield spot. He's had some loud bits in his swing. He's another Oregon State guy. So I believe he would have played there with Bazana. They would have overlapped, right? Because he was a pick in 22. Bazana was in 24. So, yeah, they definitely overlapped. I'm sure Quan knows him. And, the thing is, he's a left-hand hitter. He can play center field. He's a big kid. Relatively strong arm, steals a crud ton of bases. Like I said, maybe a little too passive. So there is that, but like his Savant page is fantastic. His prospect Savant page, and Houston is in a weird situation right now where they have a lot of needs, but you're assuming that Isaac Paredes probably moves into the outfield with Cam Smith, center, and they traded for Jesus Sanchez, who they still have years of control on. Maybe I should talk about him but I feel like I've talked about him enough. Like, stop talking about Jesus Sanchez. So with Melton, it's just this idea that I know people will be like, well, last thing I need is another unproven bat in the outfield. He brings a different component than Valera, than Capus, than DeLauder because of the elite speed there. Like those guys, like DeLauder runs well. I mean, he might even be plus when he's really getting up there, but none of them are burners. They don't really have that speed component, and he's a better defender than any of them. And with Houston's need for pitching, I just wonder if you can do some kind of deal where you trade like a Logan Allen. He's always going to be the go-to as the back of the rotation guy for a Melton, and then like another piece, because starting pitchers are valuable no matter whatever way you want to chop it, talk about it, do it. Like, I was looking at Joseph Sullivan, who I liked out of South Alabama. Ryan Forcucci is a fun player who was hurt and missed time.
Loved him in college.
I know you're a big fan of his. You can go down, kind of go through the list and debate a few different guys. Alonzo Treadwell was an interesting kid out of UCLA who didn't develop, but nobody does at UCLA. Who's not my type of guy because he's 6'8", but a lot of people have really liked him over the years. But there's some interesting prospects. It's not the deepest system, but if you're going to trade for a pitcher, I think you can get more. And Melton is just interesting because his literally has one of the best prospects savant pages in all of AAA. Like everything is in the red except for his swing and his own swing. So outside of that, everything else is like up there with the best of the best of minor league baseball. And that just made him an interesting target.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. I think that's a nice approach, is to go with guys who are maybe block some places that you might match up with. The Astros, for sure, are an interesting way to go in terms of um, matching up with them and the situation they're in. Because I don't really know where they go this year. Like the West is still pretty bad. Like you have the Mariners, but they have a lot of guys leaving, and the A's are coming up. The Mariners won the division this year. The Angels are stupid. So there's that. So that's an interesting way to go to see if there's a match there. They haven't really traded much since the Miles Straw deal. The one team the Guardians have not traded with that I think everyone's been begging them to trade with for the last couple of years, and I think there's more incentive to do it now, or at least there's a pathway to do it, is the St. Louis Cardinals. The St. Louis Cardinals, they're talking about trading Sonny Gray this offseason. I do think they have Chaim Bloom, who's a new GM taking over for longtime president of baseball operations John Mozeliak. So he's going to want to put his stamp on this team, right? He's going to want to do different things. I don't recall off the top of my head. I should know this, but I don't know. I don't think Chaim Bloom has spent any time in Cleveland, right? I don't think he's
No, I don't believe so. He was
part of
Tampa
that
to
trip.
Boston to there.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. There might be a year or two he was in Cleveland, but I believe it's all.
I don't think so. Yeah,
Tampa.
but their assistant GM is Rob Serfolio, who is the former director of player development with the Guardians, and he's well liked there as one of our everydayers who's a Cardinals fan. Team Big V always comments they like him. The Cardinals have multiple guys. I think you could make calls to the Cardinals about. We've talked about Brendan Donovan, right? He is essentially what you wish Daniel Steeman was, which is a guy who doesn't have for a ton of power, but he plays a lot of positions. He plays them well, and he gets on base, and there's some pop in the bat. Like he's essentially what you wish Daniel Steeman could be. That's a guy I think they could consider trading because they do have JJ Weathercolt coming up soon, and you already talked about Mason Wynn. Like I don't want to make room for Weatherholt, right? And they also have multiple hitters that you could go after too. They've got um, Alec Burleson who doesn't quite fit what the Guardians are doing right now. Like he chases a little bit. He actually doesn't whiff a lot, doesn't strike out, but he chases more than they like. But his exit velo numbers were in the 72nd percentile this year, so that's really good. He squared the ball up a ton. I like Burleson a little bit. And then there's also Lars Nootbaar, who everyone's loved for a couple of years. I'm still interested in Lars Nootbaar. He walks, he doesn't chase, he hits the ball hard, he's got good exit velocities. He was a great defender. He was not as good of a defender this year, but he's a guy who's got great arm strength. He's in this 81st percentile in arm strength, and he's only got 2 years left as well, by the way. He's only 26 and 27. So I wonder if he might be at the point where the Cardinals are like, you know what, we'll move him for something. I think the Cardinals are in a position to make a move like this, and Cleveland could be a match. Like, would you be willing to give up a Cal Steven? I know that's a big risk, but like we like him. But would you be willing to give up a Cal Steven and a Juan Brito or some of the other guys that Rob Serfolio oversaw in his time here for a guy like a Donovan, or I don't know about a Burleson? That's a little bit risky to me, but a Lars Nootbaar.
I don't love the
Who's very
savant page
attractive.
on Burleson.
Yeah, it's not as good as the other ones. Like it's okay. He does have big arm strength, so he could fit in the outfield with the arm strength. But the exit velo this year took a big step forward. I don't know if that's like I know you say, I need to see it 2 years in a row. It improved over last year, but it wasn't that special last year. But he does square the ball up. I don't know how important that is or what that has to be paired with, but
I don't see it like it's something that consistently negates. It feels like a noise stat. I got to be honest. Just having dived
yeah,
into a
I
lot of
don't
it.
know for sure what context needs to be added to. I think that's the thing is what stat do you need to go with barreling up or square it up to make it valuable because on its own it doesn't do enough like barrels.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys who are very successful who don't do it at all. Like that's a stat that I often see successful players not have, and kind of fringy guys
and
do have.
The Cardinals need bullpen help. So I mean, I don't know if you could really move Hunter Gaddis. Would you move a Hunter Gaddis for a Lada and Nootbaar? Would you? No, you wouldn't do that.
No, you can't. The bullpen's already shaky as is. You can't. You can't
I
even consider
know,
trading Gaddis.
Okay, so you're talking. I know you said Logan Allen. I don't think the Cardinals want Logan Allen necessarily, but I think there's pieces they could match up on. And considering that Rob Cerfolio knows the system pretty well, what do you think?
For specifically, we're going to Nootbaar here, going to
I would say Nootbaar or
I think Donovan's probably too expensive, just because he's still got a lot of years. Gold Glove.
He's only got 2 years left. Him and Nootbaar both only have 6 and 7 left.
I think it's interesting because there's a few years ago where they refused to trade Nootbaar in a bigger trade.
He's got 2 years left.
Yeah, and that's why. And after the injury plague year, like I said, I don't think you can trade from the pen because everything we've talked about with the pen already. Like they just don't have a lot of guys that they trust. I would be curious to see what St. Louis wants. Like, are they going to do a tear down to some degree? Are they going to do an in between? Like,
would you trade a Daniel Espino for one of those guys?
No. Because here's the thing.
A couple years ago, you'd have said, yeah. I'd trade him for anyone if he had any trade value.
Because of his situation, it's not going to be just Espino. It's going to be Espino and another pretty high-end prospect.
Sure.
So it's like, I'm not going to trade Espino because if it blows up really bad for you. And it's like, you're going to have to trade 2 good pieces because of his injury record, because of everything. Like, Espino's trade value, I think, is relatively low because of the risk involved.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm just saying, I think that's one guy that could be interesting. I was trying to think back to players that Rob Cerfolio spoke highly of. Do you have another one you wanted to go with? I know we said we wanted like an out of the box one where we're low on time.
Yeah, we're low on time. Why don't we go with yours because we're low on time? I'll save some of my out of the box ones for later.
I have an out of the box one. I don't know if the Diamondbacks, what they're doing right now, but there were talks this year about how the team was a little upset with Ketel Marte. In terms of not reporting to the team. I know his house got broken into and he was pretty shooken up about that.
Mm-hmm.
But they have Jordan Lawler coming up. They have Gino Groover. They're not going to get Corbin Burns back until mid-season at best this year. It's a weird team, and
I will say Marte, Lawler spent a lot of time at third this year after Suarez got traded. He kind of naturally took that position over.
He did, sure. But I wonder, like Ketel Marte would be a slam dunk he'd be a slam dunk for any team, not just Cleveland. Yeah. But they need pitching help. It's ironic that they traded Slade Skelly to Cleveland because they need pitching help. They had Corbin Burns had Tommy John, and they were going with Ryan Nelson and Eduardo Rodriguez. Fott was okay this year. Actually, he was not okay. It was Ryan Nelson and nobody else in that rotation. So the Guardians have maybe some starting pitching they can offer them. Obviously, it's going to take a big package to get him. I just kind of wonder where the team is at on him. I'm not saying he's on the block or anything. I know he's probably not on the block, but there were some interesting comments this year about him and the team and his situation. And I wonder if like there's a conversation that can be had.
So his average value, he makes $14.64 million on average through 2030. So
he's
basically
32 already.
He's 32, but I mean, you're probably starting with them asking for Gavin Williams plus a piece or 2.
You think?
Yes. I mean, he just had a
great year, 145 WRC
plus. 4.6 4.6 WAR. The last 3 years, 4.3, 6.3, 4.6. Turned 32 during the season, right? So like, you're looking at it's just hard because of his age and everything. I mean, it's wild. I like the idea of it. I would love to have him in the lineup. I don't know. Like, are they going to do an in-betweener year? That's a great question, I guess, for another day. It's like, could you, are you talking about a Ralphie Velasquez? Or you're talking about trying to do, pieces like that? If it's an in-betweener year, guys who could help him in a year type situation, but that's for another day.
Yeah, we got lots more trades to talk about this offseason. On tomorrow's show, I'll be solo. We'll be talking about out of the box, more trades, ideas for the Guardians. Stay tuned.
Thank you for joining us. Remember to rate, review, download daily. Do your part. Give us your crazy trade ideas. Thank you all, and go Guardians, go.